Hey, what's up guys? Rob Balasabas here. And in this video, I want to share with you the requirements that I had to fulfill and check off to travel to the US as a Canadian for business purposes. So let's jump into it. First thing is that I am not a COVID travel expert by any means. Full disclosure, I'm just a regular guy traveling to the US for business. I'm actually filming this from San Diego in my hotel room at the moment. I've been doing a lot of research on what was required for Canadians to travel into the US, and I was thinking about creating this video, but I wanted to make sure that it was all good, that I was actually able to get here into the US before creating this video for you. So again, all of that just to say that full disclosure, I am not a COVID travel expert by any means. I don't know if those exist. I am not that. I'm just sharing my own personal experience with you as a Canadian citizen traveling for work, for business into the US. So please take what I share in this video and then go and make sure you do your own research. All of the sites and resources that I will mention in this video will be in the description down below. So make sure that you use those as starting points and then make sure to dig deeper. And again, I'm going to get into some details here depending on what state you're traveling into in the US. There are different requirements. This will just make sure that all your travel into the US is as smooth as possible. Another thing to mention is that restrictions and travel restrictions and borders are continually changing. And so right now I am filming this as of July 12th, 2021. If you're watching this a day or two or a week from then, months from now, then things may have drastically changed. There may not be any more restrictions. There may be more restrictions. There may be different restrictions. And again, I'm making sure I spend time in this introduction to set that expectation that things change. And again, make sure you do your own research. So the first requirement here is business travel only. So no pleasure or tourism purpose travel, just business or essential work only. There is a website from the US Embassy travel restrictions fact sheet that will help you go through this. It will outline the travel that is allowed at the moment. So business travel only for Canadian citizens that want to get into the US as of today. Second, depending on which state you are planning to travel into in the United States, the CDC has actually created a really cool, very helpful page called the Travel Planner that lets you search by state and what the quarantine requirements are. Do they have businesses that are close to travelers? Any COVID testing requirements? Are masks mandated? Limits to gathering sizes and other information. And sometimes it will refer you to that state's website, which came up for some of the searches that I was doing just for fun. One example is Hawaii. At the moment, it actually sends you into the state of Hawaii website to outline all of the COVID-19 travel requirements. The next requirement is a negative COVID test. Now, this is very, very important. Negative COVID test within 72 hours of your flight. Pay attention to the type of tests. There's different tests out there. I suggest going to a private clinic that guarantees results within 48 hours. I took a rapid COVID test, which was acceptable for me to travel into California, which is where I am right now. And that test costs about $130 Canadian. If you're traveling for work or business, then likely your company will cover that cost. Otherwise, why are you traveling if it's not for business or work? Now, I'm in Vancouver. I did some Google searches and actually talked to some friends and colleagues of mine that have been traveling, Canadians that traveled into the US for business, and they recommended covid-medical.ca, and that's where I went. I'll actually show you a little bit of a clip from a couple days ago when I took the COVID test, so go watch this. This was my experience taking the rapid COVID test at the Vancouver International Airport, and I'll see you after this little clip. I'm at the airport. I just got my rapid COVID test. The results will be available in about 20-25 minutes. All right, just got the test back. We are negative, so all good to go. Ready to rock. Woo! So the interesting thing about a rapid COVID test, I've never had a rapid COVID test before. I actually had a regular COVID test, I suppose, from a public government clinic months ago, actually, because I thought I caught COVID. That's a whole other story, but fortunately I didn't, came out negative. When I took that test, that was a PCR test, and it went up really, really high into my nasal passage. But the difference with the rapid COVID test is they actually just do the swab in your nostrils. Kind of tickles, but it doesn't go so deep as the regular COVID test that you would get through the government public clinics. And so with the rapid COVID test at the YVR, I got the results back within about 25 minutes, really quick. There's a waiting area, so I just waited there, got the results, said negative. They give you a piece of paper, and you keep that with you, and you bring that with you to the airport on flight day, because they will want to see that before they let you board the plane. Another requirement that you may come across, but you actually don't need, I did some research on this because on the app where I booked my flight, it said that I may need an ESTA. ESTA stands for Electronic System for Travel Authorization. You actually don't need it if you're a Canadian citizen, so I just double checked that. So if you do come across that as a checklist for yourself, again, everything I say, please double check yourself. Do your own research, but from my research and my experience, because I'm here, I didn't have to do this at all. There is a link down below to a website on the cbp.gov site that tells you what an ESTA is and who may need it and who is waived from that requirement, but I will leave that link down in the description, along with all the other links that I mentioned in this video. You will also need to be fully vaccinated. Again, as of today, July 12th, 2021, you will need to be fully vaccinated. Even if you have your second shot already, you will need to wait that 14-day period after your second shot to be considered fully vaccinated to then travel into the US and avoid any possible quarantines. Again, depending on the state that you're traveling into, sometimes they require you to have quarantining, sometimes not. If you're fully vaccinated, you can usually bypass the quarantine period. If you are fully vaccinated, which I again suggest that you do before you do any travel into the US, as a Canadian, make sure that you also download the Health Gateway app. This is the app from the government that will have your records saying that you are fully vaccinated, that you have both shots on certain dates. It's a little bit clunky, a little bit tricky, like most government sites and apps, but it works. Okay, so it shows you officially that you are vaccinated. It has official proof of both your vaccinations. Now, I want to give you a couple bonus tips here when traveling, especially when you are traveling during this time that we're in. First tip is to print out all of these necessary documents. Okay, I have all the apps, I have all the screenshots, like you probably will, but if you or someone you know has a printer, then take a few minutes just to make sure that everything is printed out. I actually have it right here. So your negative COVID test, your vaccine proof for both your vaccinations. When you get to the airport, you'll also be asked to fill out an attestation form, which basically says, you know, that you are fully vaccinated and that you haven't come into contact with anyone that has had COVID or that you haven't traveled to certain countries. There is actually a form that you can download from the government websites and then print out and sign. But when you get to the airport and the airline counter, they will usually just give you a QR code, which they did with me. You scan the QR code, you fill out your name as well as your confirmation number, and then just acknowledging that, you know, you haven't come into contact with anyone with COVID, you don't have COVID yourself, you're fully vaccinated, all those things. And then they'll want to see proof of your vaccinations, and then you're usually good to go. I do have the form, I printed it out, but I didn't need it because they already just had the QR code at the airport. Now, another thing I want to make sure that you get is travel insurance. If you have travel insurance, amazing. If you don't, this is just a reminder. I got travel insurance from BCAA, which is a common provider of travel insurance where I'm from. So do research for yourself. But the travel insurance actually covers quite a fair bit. If for some reason I get sick, I catch COVID here in the US, then I am covered, all of that stuff. There's a bunch of things. And it only cost me, for the 5 days that I'm here for this trip, it cost me around $25, $30 Canadian, which is well worth the investment for what you're getting. I sound like a travel insurance sales guy. Travel insurance, very, very important. This is something that is nowhere in any of the websites, any of the list, any of the requirements, I suggest getting a letter from your company inviting you to the office for the company meetings or the company event or retreat or summit for the specific reason of a business trip, just in case. Again, this is not an official request or requirement on any government website, but just something for yourself. And so I got that. I requested that from my company and they were more than happy to provide it. But to be completely transparent with you, I never had to show it to anyone, but it was something that I just had handy just in case. And my final advice, just from my experience going through this whole adventure today, going from Vancouver to Seattle to now San Diego, where I'm here now, is only really travel if it is really for business or work. Don't try to bend the rules. Don't try any of that stuff. You may get through. The risk is very high if you don't have a legitimate reason to be traveling into the US as a Canadian right now. You're more than welcome to ask questions in the comments. Now, I am not a COVID-19 travel expert. Again, just disclosing that with you. I'm just a regular Canadian guy that traveled for work into the US, sharing my experience with you. So I just ask you to refer to the links in the description to all of the Canadian Health website resources and toll-free numbers. Those will have the most accurate answers to your questions. I actually vlogged my day traveling from Vancouver to San Diego and then coming through Seattle. Actually, I had a layover in Seattle for a few hours. I vlogged that whole day, and so you can catch that here on this channel. And so with that, thank you for watching this video. I hope it has been helpful for you. And if you haven't subscribed yet, then make sure you subscribe to the channel. I just share videos like this as a remote worker. Hopefully that helps you as well. And safe travels if you're gonna be coming down south into the States. And again, I'll see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.